want you to look at your career like a jungle gym and not a ladder. Be agile, be proactive, be optimistic, and try new things and look for new opportunities outside of your current organization, but also inside of your current organization and even inside of your department so that you feel fulfilled and that you're valued and compensated fairly. Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. One of my very favorite things about being a podcaster is crossing paths with other incredible podcasters. If you love this show, especially when I share about my experience with healthcare burnout and recovery, you're going to want to check out the podcast, Burnout, What I've Learned So Far, hosted by my friend Meg Letty. Meg is a former CT surgery PA turned advocate for healthcare provider wellness. Turn in to hear how she recovered from burnout and integrated well-being into her life to create a life of dreams, not nightmares. Add Burnout, What I Have Learned So Far with Meg Letty to your podcast queue to start your journey to wellness and healing today. Today on The PA is In, we're going to debunk this myth that the one path to success and fulfillment in medicine is to climb this leadership ladder that seems a lot like a corporate ladder. This idea of a ladder leaning against a building that is linear and that you climb one rung at a time is dead. In fact, its time of death is right now. No longer are careers in healthcare something where you start at the bottom and work your way up into leadership clinically and then eventually into administration. There is absolutely positively a way to find a career that compensates you generously while you're working clinically, and you don't even need to be a leader in order to do that. If you have been considering a clinical leadership position, but you're wondering if it's right for you, this episode is for you. If you've taken on a position of clinical leadership, but find that you actually don't really enjoy managing people, this episode is also for you. I want to take an opportunity to remind you that this journey through healthcare as a clinician and a human being is not linear, that there will be twists and turns, job changes and specialty changes, moves to different areas of your town, state, or country. And there could even be shifts that are made in your career inside of your current position that make it a better fit for you and make it feel better and more fulfilling for you. So what does the data say about this thing? So according to a 2020 survey conducted by the staffing firm at AMN Healthcare, the average healthcare professional changes jobs approximately every 3 years. This idea of getting a job, staying there for 30 years, and retiring with a pension is no longer the norm. I want you to think about that statistic for a moment. So let's just say you work clinically for 30 years and you change jobs approximately every 3 years or change positions within that same organization. You could hold an average of 10 different positions over the course of your career. Obviously, this is variable, and there will be seasons of your career where you might leave jobs sooner than 3 years or stay in positions longer than 3 years. The reasons for leaving a position, an employer, a specialty, a situation, or even a specific healthcare setting is going to vary person to person and depend on you. Interestingly, in this 2020 study, the AMN staffing firm found that nurses and physical therapists tend to stay in their positions for longer periods of time. Physicians, NPs, and PAs make changes more often. Now, people leave jobs for all sorts of different reasons. They leave for a better compensation package or an improved schedule. We leave jobs for opportunities for career advancement. Changes come when we want to make a bigger impact, and we don't feel that we can do that where we are. And quite frankly, we leave jobs when we are unhappy or dissatisfied with our current work environment. So, I want to tell you a little story that really shaped and changed my mindset regarding job changes over the course of a career. Now, this is a little bit of a tangent, and I talk about my mom and her job, and my grandfather and his job, and my husband and his job. But I want you to stay with me because I promise it ties back to what we are talking about today and this ladder mentality and the fact that we declared that ladder to be DEAD, dead. So, my beloved mother graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from her undergraduate and went on to pursue her master's degree. Now, I grew up in the actual middle of nowhere in Maine, very rural. And my mom's first job out of undergrad was as a chemical engineer at a pulp and paper mill in my very small town. So, that employer sent her back to graduate school. She finished her graduate degree as a chemical engineer and went on to spend a 28-year career working in chemical engineering and then eventually in systems engineering at the same mill. I am so incredibly proud of my mom and the amazing career that she has had. My mother is a force to be reckoned with, and I say that in the most loving and respectful way. She is one of the smartest people that I know. Now, during that 28-year career, my mom did make changes at her job within the organization. So over time, she took on different projects and filled different roles, all of which used her skills on different projects and endeavors. But she spent her entire career at one single organization. That is what she knew. I think that that is what her father did. And that is what my grandfather did on the other side when he taught for 55 years, teaching physics to the same students and their kids and their kids' kids at the same high school in the same town. So, why am I telling you that that was the trajectory of my grandfather's career and my mom's career? Well, here it comes back around. So, when Dan and I first got married, he was at this period of transition in his career. Now, my husband does not work in healthcare, but he does work in corporate America doing something. I hope he doesn't listen to this. Dan, I love you so much. Human resources information systems, I think. um, and that's pretty much all I know about what he does. When we first got married, he had just gotten a new job. And then shortly thereafter, he made another job change. He did some consulting. He made a third job change. And around that time that our oldest was born, which was like 8+ years ago, he took the position where he is now. So during the period of time when we were dating and first married, he changed jobs, and then he changed again. He switched to consulting and changed again. And my mom was a little like, I wouldn't say she was freaking out. Maybe she was freaking out like a little. So my mom was pretty concerned and shared her concerns with us about how she felt those various job changes were going to look on his resume long term. So she had this view, which is what she experienced in her career, that you get a job, that you worked hard, that you showed up, that you were a good team member, and you stayed there and retired from that job. So, I brought it up to Dan and I said, hey, my mom is a little bit concerned about this because she has a different view of jobs and corporate America and moves and career strategy than you do. So he had explained to me at that time that each of the moves that he was making was strategic. And he told me that it's no longer this corporate ladder where you get in on the ground floor and step by step grow within one organization, straight up in one organization with one single destination. Around that time, I saw an article that declared the corporate ladder to be dead. This article gave this great illustration of how it is no longer a corporate ladder, but rather a jungle gym. That the path to success and fulfillment at work is no longer at one employer, one organization, or even on one track. Truly, the best way to find a job that feels good and fits your life and fulfills and excites you is to be agile, and open to new opportunities, just like Dan was. Whether that's a lateral move within your current company or climbing up, jumping over, sliding down, running back to circle back to another organization, or to go back to somewhere that you've been before, or adventure into a specialty that you have never done before, it's not so straightforward as it used to be. We interrupt this broadcast with a very important announcement. You are not making enough money. Your practice and your physician do not understand the value you are adding to their patients, and therefore, you aren't earning what you're worth. If in the past your requests for a raise have been met with one single word, no. If you're working more hours than ever and seeing more patients, but you're not making any more money and you're feeling pissed about it. If you feel like you've hit the ceiling of your income band, this guide is for you. I've compiled the 5 most costly and most common mistakes that PAs make when asking for a raise, and I've told you how to avoid them and what to do instead. Download your free guide at tracybingaman.com/mistakes. So how do you decide if it's time to make a change? If you haven't already taken a look at the Decision Framework downloadable guide, you can find it at tracybingaman.com/decide. It will help you to organize your thoughts and weigh the pros and cons, both short-term and long-term, about staying in a position versus seeking employment elsewhere. You can also use that decision framework to help you choose between 2 different positions if you have 2 offers, and if you're trying to decide which is better. Oftentimes, a concern that I hear when someone is considering leaving a position is the duration of time that they have been there. They're concerned that when they put their CV, the duration that they were at a position, their future potential employer is going to think they're unreliable for not having stayed in that position longer. So here's what I have learned in coaching and counseling people through these transitions as a part of their career as a healthcare provider. Your employer has become very used to seeing people who have made job changes. As we covered earlier, the average is a shift in jobs every 3 years. That is important to note, an average. That means that some people stay in jobs much longer than 3 years, and some people will make a change sooner. There's no magic duration that is going to make a future employer think that you're quote unquote reliable. What they're looking for, honestly, as a part of an interview or when they review your CV or if they're talking to you about it, is a well thought out answer to the question, why did you make a change at this time? So, this is something that you should think about and have a good, succinct answer to in advance of an interview. Think about each of those changes and think about a way that you can phrase the reason for that change in a way that isn't super emotional or disparaging to your past employers. All of that to say that there are very real, valid reasons that you should leave a position. I'm going to spend the rest of this episode covering 5 of those reasons that you should absolutely leave your position ASAP. It feels right to say that I don't get to choose when you leave your job or not, and that these are not as black and white as it may sound. You don't need anyone's permission to give notice, to start looking for a better job, or to be open to opportunities. But in case any of those fears have kept you somewhere longer than you think you should have stayed, here are 5 clear reasons to leave your job. The first reason to leave your job is unethical business practices or fraudulent activity. If you're aware of fraudulent billing, illegal activity, unethical practices when it comes to businesses, people practicing medicine that isn't evidence-based or is dangerous to patients, it's time to leave. Then comes this question of knowing about fraudulent and unethical things happening, if, how, and when you should report it. This is a very hard, emotionally charged, personal decision, and you are really the only one who can decide what is the best move given what you know about the situation. Now, I'm not talking about being a mandated reporter or reporting anything that you think is abusive, neglectful when it comes to patients, children, or elders. What I'm talking about is that if you know that something is happening to intentionally defraud Medicare or private insurers, if you are aware of office visits being billed that aren't happening, or people within the office that are billing for things that didn't occur. If documentation is being fabricated, if one of your colleagues is misrepresenting themselves or lying about their degree or training, those are all things that would mandate that you consider reporting them for fraud. When choosing whether you think something is worthy of reporting, I want you to, as best you can, try to remove your personal feelings or guilt around potential consequences. What if you or a family member was being seen at this practice and one of those illegal or immoral things happened to them? It is, if your response is that you would never want a family member to be seen because it's dangerous or fraudulent or unethical, strongly consider reporting to the Board of Medicine or appropriate authorities in your area. Honestly, no one wants to think about this happening, but if it is happening in your practice, you are liable for the fraud that is being billed under your license and NPI number, and your reputation is closely intertwined with this practice or employer. It's one thing if things are happening accidentally and there was an oversight or something was being done by mistake. And when realized, it is addressed and corrected and reported. But what I'm talking about here is an employer that is knowingly committing fraud or breaking the law, who is unwilling to stop doing it. Every day that you stay in a practice that is committing fraud or performing illegal documentation, you are, by that action, condoning what they are doing. The second reason to leave is a toxic work environment. Now, I know we've started really heavy out of the gates with fraud, which is a huge downer. And now we're going to move on to a much more uplifting topic of a terrible toxic work environment. The second reason that I want you to strongly consider where you are currently working and reconsider whether you want to keep working there is a toxic work environment, particularly one that you don't see improving or changing anytime soon. A toxic work environment is defined as an environment in which the behavior, attitudes, or actions of individuals create a hostile, unhealthy, or otherwise negative atmosphere. Doesn't that sound like healthcare to you? Working in a toxic environment can negatively impact your well being, mental health, productivity, and the morale of you and other team members who are working there. I used to work with a surgeon who would say when something terrible or horrible or also something very minor happened, like our lunch was late or we were running behind or we had a late start in the OR, that's bad for morale. They would say, wow, that's bad for morale. A toxic work environment is something that is bad for morale ongoing. I feel like a toxic work environment is a little bit like, I am going to get this historically wrong, but that judge that said relative to pornography, that you would know it when you see it, but it's a little bit hard to define. So there are many behaviors inside of healthcare as a whole that we have as a part of our training and hierarchy and the culture that lead to toxic work environments. So healthcare is an area that is fraught with both trauma and toxicity. We experience this as a part of our training as new graduates when we're orienting and as a part of our careers as a whole. So, things that can lead to a specifically toxic work environment include, but definitely are not limited to, bullying, harassment, an excessive workload, a lack of communication or inappropriate communication, unrealistic expectations, poor to non existent feedback. Also, things like gossip, favoritism, and micromanagement, or even just a dearth of opportunities for growth or advancement for you or specific team members. The bottom line here is that if you are feeling this heavy dread about going to work because the environment is toxic, it's time to leave your job, or it could be time to leave and look for something else. Number 3, Non-existent work-life balance. You probably already know that I think work-life balance and this idea of existing perfectly balanced is bullshit. I think that the idea of balance as a snapshot in time where everything is perfectly weighted half and half, and your life is on one side of the teeter-totter and your work is on the other side of the teeter-totter, that you are giving your work too much weight in your life if you are making it equal to all the other things that you have going on. That's too much credit. That's too much time spent at work. But if you have been feeling persistently out of balance, if you've been living a life where work takes up the large majority of your time, your space, and your mental energy, and you feel like the rest of your life is an afterthought, I want you to listen carefully. Life is too short to work at a job that takes every single drop of your knowledge, creativity, and the goodness that is inside of you. Patient care is absolutely a worthy pursuit, but it should not be draining you at 100% consistently. I do think that if non existent work life balance is a reason that you're considering leaving work, first, I want you to try building boundaries and asking for support and sharing that you're overwhelmed by the workload and that you think it's unreasonable. All of the things that you're doing in the limited number of hours that you have in a day or in your shift. If enough clinical employees share that the workload and expectations are unreasonable, sometimes you can get more human resources. Sometimes you can get another position approved. Sometimes you can get increased administrative time or help or redistribution of that work. However, if none of those things are happening and non existent work life balance is going to continue, and you've tried building boundaries or it hasn't worked in the past, non existent work life balance is a wonderful, worthy reason to leave your job. Number 4, poor compensation. If you're not compensated whether it's the benefits package, the schedule, or your actual paycheck, or you simply feel like you're not valued at work, those are all reasons to consider moving on. Part of this is quantifiable. So, numbers, things like salary, retirement match, health insurance, paid time off, and your CME reimbursement. Part of this is qualitative. How does working there make you feel? Do you feel like a valued member of the team? Do you have a vote? Does your administration understand what it's like to work at the bedside in the capacity that you are? Are your physician and nurse practitioner colleagues treated fairly, better than, or worse than you are? Does your job realize that you have specific revenue generating value that is making them money, but also that you are valuable simply because you are a person? You deserve absolutely positively, without a shadow of a doubt, to feel valued at work. You deserve to be compensated fairly and generously for your knowledge, skills, and ability. Your paycheck as a PA should be something that you are proud of. If you don't feel like that is true, consider booking a negotiation consult. It's an hour-long consult with me where we review your current compensation and I offer you feedback on what you can ask for and how to ask this in a way that is both grateful and effective. The link to book a negotiation consult is linked in the show notes. You have worked so incredibly hard to get to the point where you are in your career. You add value in a way that is unique to you, and you take care of patients so incredibly well. If you are not valued at work and you don't feel valued based on your compensation, and you've tried and you haven't gotten anywhere, it may be time to move on. Last but certainly not least, number 5 of a reason to consider leaving your job is simply that you don't like it. That is the entire reason. Not liking where you work and not enjoying your work anymore is reason enough to leave. Now, if you simply don't like the content of what you're doing, but you love certain aspects of your job, take the time to make a note of what you do enjoy. How can you find a position in your organization or department or specialty, or even outside of where you are, where you get to do the things you love most about your current position? If you can objectively zoom out and look at your job and say, these are the aspects that I enjoy. I enjoy the patient interaction. I enjoy the time spent doing this procedure, and identify what you do enjoy. This will give you a leg up when you start to look for a new position. You don't always have to have a good reason like fraud or a toxic work environment. It doesn't have to be fraudulent. It doesn't have to be that they're breaking the law or that you're underpaid. Sometimes you have simply grown. You have outgrown your job from a skill standpoint, and that's okay. Outgrowing your position from an ambition standpoint is also perfectly normal. Deciding that it's time to move on simply because you don't enjoy the place that you are working, the patients that you are caring for, or the specialty that you are in is a-okay. Really and truly, you do not need permission from anyone to know that it's time to move on, and leaving your job is absolutely okay. It's not going to drop an atom bomb on your career. Your future employer will understand that you are a human being who is growing and changing, and the position that you once held is no longer a great fit for you. So use that decision framework that is linked in the show notes. Consider booking a negotiation consult if compensation is the problem, or if you're still on the fence after this episode, and you're like, is it time to quit or not? Head on back and play episode 193, how to know if it's time to quit your job, for me to walk you through using your mind and your gut to decide a pro-con list, and also just that gut check to see if it's time to leave. If I could go back and tell myself anything in my career, I would give them all 200 podcast episodes. No, I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I would relay to the younger version of me would be to be more proactive about my job changes. It doesn't feel good to wait until you are so unhappy and frustrated that you cannot imagine working another day at the position that you are at. So I want you to look at your career like a jungle gym and not a ladder. Be agile, be proactive, be optimistic, and try new things, and look for new opportunities outside of your current organization, but also inside of your current organization and even inside of your department, so that you feel fulfilled and that you're valued and compensated fairly. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast, because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.